Corinthians 7. The truth is that in connection with the song that we've just sung, I sort of find myself treading out on waters that are really too deep, even for me. And you will probably feel in a similar way. Last week, as we examined this chapter, we came upon this passage where Paul is challenging the mind. And his instruction from Jesus Christ is very clear for slaves. Even though you could possibly find yourself in a very severe situation where your master was unkind, where the way that you and perhaps your wife or your children were being treated was utterly disrespectful. Paul stabs the light into that dark place, and he reaches that far out on the water, if you will, and says, listen, I know that goes against everything that's going on inside of you, but God will, if you let Him, God will walk with you upon even these waters. And I am just overwhelmed by that. And in our text tonight, more of that attitude is going to be reflected. It's paralyzing. If you study this with an open eye and an open mind and a heart that is really willing to say, okay, whatever the words are, freshen me up, God, explode my heart with your word. Let what we read, let what we dwell on tonight from this chapter just be first and foremost experienced in my life. $25. Now, about virgins. I have no command from the Lord, but I give judgment. So we understand that we're dealing with judgment. I give judgment as one who by the Lord's mercy is trustworthy. It's sound advice. Young people, it's sound advice. Because of the present crisis, I think that it is good for you to remain as you are. Are you married? Don't seek a divorce. Are you unmarried? Don't look for a wife. But if you marry, you have not sinned. And if a virgin marries, she has not sinned. But those who marry will face many troubles in this life, and I want to spare you of that. What I mean is this: the time is short. From now on, those who have wives should live as if they had none. Those who mourn as if they did not. Those who are happy as if they were not. Those who buy something as if it were not theirs to keep. Those who use the things of this world as if not engrossed in them. For this world and its present form is passing away. I would like you to be free from concern. An unmarried man is concerned about the Lord's affairs, how he can please the Lord. But a married man is concerned about the affairs of this world, how he can please his wife, and his interests are divided. An unmarried woman or virgin is concerned about the Lord's affairs. Her aim is to be devoted to the Lord in both body and spirit. But a married woman is concerned about the affairs of this world, how she can please her husband. I am not saying this to restrict you. I am saying this for your good, that you may live in a right way, in undivided devotion to the Lord. Okay. Let's clarify just a couple of things so that we know nobody leaves here saying, well, this is what preacher said. Okay? To the best of my ability in understanding this passage, Paul is not saying that if you marry, you are doing something wrong. He has already given permission earlier in the chapter. Nevertheless, there are some things that the apostle wants to bring to view. Given persons' present circumstances and conditions. What are your conditions? Are you married? Are you not married? You're widowed? You've never been married? You're engaged? All of these are, appropriate locations to be. Nothing that Paul is about to say is for the purpose of keeping you from marriage. From the standpoint of it's a sin if you do. That is not Paul's intention. Okay? So there's some context in which he must feel capable that the reader is going to understand what he means, especially given the truth or the principles that he has already laid out, that it's okay, that it's good for a guy if he wants to have a wife. You can do that. It's good. It's a way of eliminating the temptation of sexual immorality, all these various things, whatever. So there's possibility. So whatever Paul is saying here, he is not undoing what he has already given strict instructions concerning. Nevertheless, this is a section of judgment. It is judgment that is based upon the wisdom that he has in Christ Jesus, he says. And it is combined with 26. You need to see it, underline it. I would suggest that you highlight it somehow to your attention, an asterisk or underlining it in the margin. Verse 26 says, because of the present crisis. That's why I speak as I do. There was some kind of circumstance that was motivating beyond just, it's not just this trustworthy wisdom. It's that combined with, okay, and we are up against this. We are facing this. There are some troubled times. So Paul just has reasonable justification, for coaching and counseling. These are his children in the faith, if you will, and he wants to see to their success. So this is not flippant advice. It is respectable. Trustworthy is how he identifies his specific word. Okay, so he gives all of this attention to various groups. And again, various groups are situated even as we are in this congregation. We have widows, we have widowers, we have people who have been divorced, we have people that are married, we have people that might be engaged. I mean, the crowd is big, so we have all these scenarios. People that have never been married and people that don't even know what a girlfriend is. Okay, some of you down to that size. That's okay. This is what God is trying to communicate, and it's worth hearing. I admit that this passage in my younger years sort of troubled me. But the older that I get, the greater amount of wisdom I am able to see in light of what Paul is trying to say. And those who marry, he says, will face many troubles in this life, 28. And I just want to spare you of that. Well, what kind of troubles, Paul? I mean, what are you talking about? Well, thank goodness he explains. What I mean is this, 29, that the time is short. Here is another clip into his mind. What's motivating this pep talk? What's motivating a present crisis? And combine it with this. The window of your life is like that. It's short. It's over. As quick as you begin, you return to the dust. This life is the life that we have to please our Maker. And that life, though it be 80 plus years, though it be 90 years, is like that. It's short. Paul realizes that time is of the essence. Okay, so here's what he is laying the groundwork to suggest. He is going to lay the groundwork that there is wisdom in not marrying. Now, we're sort of appalled by that. Americans are in love with being in love. We love that. See? I have to use that term to describe it. We love the idea of sensitive, sugar-lipping kind of love. And that's fine. Nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. But I suggest to you that you can live a godly, spiritual, fulfilled life without lip sugar love like that is depicted in our society. And that's what Paul's trying to say. Okay, look, there are circumstances that you're up against, plus the fact that this little window that you have to get this right is so very brief. It is over. I'm already 43. That's impossible. 20 years is clipped off of my life just like that. 40 years old. I didn't get a chance to really even consider how speedily time was until I hit my 20s. Because I just wanted to be older. When I was 16, I wanted to be, 25. You know how that is. So the idea and the essence of time is so brief. there is wisdom, Paul says. Look at what he says. 29, he says, from now on, those who have wives should live as if they had none. What? So because I have a wife, I should act as if I don't have one? Well, that's not what he's saying. Because if any man does not provide for his own, that is my own. That is my wife. I took her. That's my mother-in-law right there. I took her. I have obligation. And I'm supposed to carry those things out. But the spirit that I approach even something like marriage, as good as it is, and as positive of an impact that it makes in our society, and it's for procreation and all these wonderful things, but even it is to be kept in its proper check. I cannot so be in love with my wife, so be trailing on her scent, so be so sold to winning her heart day after day that every hour of every day is spent in that pursuit. Then what happens? I miss the things of the kingdom. Jesus did not say, Alex, seek your wife first. Seek me first. You'll love her. Of course you will. You'll treat her even as your own body. Any man that loves his wife loves himself, Ephesians chapter 5, and should have the disposition of a man willing to give up of his own life in order for the good of his wife. But even this marriage should not be seen to a level where it is a distraction. In and over a relationship with God, there is a proper prioritizing those who mourn. Jesus said we should mourn, but Paul says right here, he says, if you're mourning, you shouldn't be. Is that contradicting Christ? Of course it's not. Paul is listing various things. Having a wife, mourning, being happy, using the things of this world. This is the spirit of what he means in verse 31. Those who use the things of the world as if not engrossed in them. Not so tied up that you lose track, that you lose focus of what is more important. See, this is a hard conversation. Even maybe some of you right now are thinking, well, that's a little hard. But don't you remember this is the very conversation that Jesus had between Mary and Martha? Remember that? When he was at their house and Martha was tidying around the house and she was exemplifying this great spirit of hospitality, and she was serving and she was concerning herself with things that were going on inside the house and maybe the preparation. I don't know what all she was into, but you can imagine. And she came by and almost scolded Jesus. Remember? You need to tell her who's sitting at your feet doing nothing, the idle hands are a devil's workshop. She needs to get up and get busy. And Jesus said, wait a minute, hold on. There are two choices that are being made right now. And Mary is choosing the wiser. And it will not be taken from her. That is so powerful. That is what Paul is trying to say. Marriage is good. It is honorable. It is blessed by God. But a marriage is not the singular, most controlling thing in your life. Jesus Christ, His church, the kingdom. Your role involved in that is the most important thing in your life. This present world and its form and the things that are associated with that temporal mindset, those things are all going to pass away. Think about all the things. Think about all the things that presently serve to distract us. I would like for you, verse 32, I would like for you to be free from this concern. An unmarried man is concerned about the Lord's affairs. How he can please the Lord. The middle of verse 34. An unmarried woman or virgin is concerned about the Lord's affairs. Her aim is to be devoted to the Lord in both body and spirit. Now here's Paul's counsel. He says, hey, it's not a bad idea to think about this possibility. Celibacy will put you in a spot that will be helpful to you. That is being said in a context of marriage where he is not trying to say, if you marry, it's a sin. That's not what he's saying. Hear what he's trying to say. He's saying, hey, there is a lot of wisdom to not having and adding to your life other things that compete for your attention. Because there can only be in your life one true thing. Now, Paul is not saying that you cannot, he's not saying if you're married, you cannot please God because you're distracted or you're divided. It's not what he's saying. But he is saying there's wisdom in reducing your distractions. Now let's just think about it, okay? Today's my anniversary. Been married 23 years. We got 5 kids. As a consequence of engaging in the explosion of a family, in my case, I have all of these children that sincerely take time, energy, consistency, etc. Well, aren't children a blessing? Of course they are. Nobody's denying that. Nobody's trying to take away from that. What I'm saying is that children will distract you. My wife and I love these children. But she and I both would tell you that having this kind of family is not without its challenges. Even marriage itself, you can tell a difference between a couple that you know that's never been able to have children. There is just a lessening of the distraction in that family scenario compared to this other scenario. And Paul is just saying, hey, before you jump and go and get tied up, you need to consider that when you take this on, Okay? You are taking on the expectation of keeping in balance a wife and children and a mother-in-law and your parents and all these other things in this big extended family. You're stepping up to the plate to say, that is something I am willing to balance and maintain. And I'm just telling you from my own self, and maybe you're better than me, but I have been very imperfect at that. And it has caused me, on occasion, whatever the issue is, it has caused me to sort of lose focus of things that are really important. Now, I'm not saying that that can't happen in a single person's life. Of course, things could happen, like a car wreck or your parents die early or whatever. I get the fact that things could happen, but Paul's counsel is clear. A person that has no husband, no family, no wife, no children can put themselves in every way God wants them to put them, and without any hesitation about other issues or factors. That's all he's trying to say. Now, most of us sitting in this room sincerely do not think about training our children in a path of living by themselves. Do you see what Paul says here in verse 34? He says, an unmarried woman is concerned about the Lord's affair, his affairs. Her aim, do you see this? Her aim is to be devoted to the Lord in both body and spirit. Now, here's what I suggest to you. That describes what a real follower of Christ looks and sounds like. Someone who is devoted in body and spirit. When you are married, there still has to be that level of devotion to Christ in body and spirit. That's what Jesus is calling us to give up of ourselves, to change everything about our view. Do you see how deep God is willing to take this? And Paul's, just simplistically, Paul's counsel is this. When it comes to Christianity, it's just not a bad idea to think about being celibate. Look at what he says back at the beginning of the chapter, in chapter 7 and verse 7, where he's explaining that it's okay to marry. Nevertheless, the apostle says this, I wish that all men were as I am. Why? Why? Because he is putting himself in a space where he is the Lord's in body and spirit. A married man or woman is concerned about the things, the affairs of this world, how she can please her husband. That's not, Paul's not ripping that person. He's not saying, wow, here's a woman concerned about her husband. Shame, shame. That's not what he's saying. Okay? He's not saying it's a sin for you to be married. We've already established that. But there's wisdom. There is honest, real, sincere wisdom. See, this is the place. Before you change your circumstance, God is so important in your life that it is even worth evaluating the possibility of a complete path of celibacy. That's how real it is. That's the extent to which God is calling us. Now, am I the Lord's in body and in spirit? Am I that? In my walk, in my relationship with my wife, am I always keeping things where God is at the pinnacle of that? Of course I'm going to love her. Of course I'm going to do that because I'm trying to walk in the ways that God wants me to. But have there ever been times where I have elevated her beyond not that she is unworthy. That's not what I mean. From the standpoint of she's done something I'm not saying that. But I'm saying there's probably been some times where I have evaluated the good of my marriage as more important than the work God calls me to do in the kingdom. And I'm just telling you that marriage is incredibly important. And if you're in a marriage, you owe it to that person and to your God. But it's a huge step. It's okay, young people. It is okay. Most of the time, our culture sort of pushes the gas on being married. And everybody is pleased with you if you get married. And if you don't get married, guess what? Everybody will be asking questions why you're not. That's the game we play. And that's the truth. If we had one of our young people who raised their hand early in life and said, you know what, I'm just not into dudes, I'm just not into women, I'm going to honor God, that would make us nervous. That thought and that idea has not really been something that we've pressed or encouraged or even considered. We just expect that everybody here is going to get married. And Paul is saying, whoa, before you take that step, let's think. Get married, there's a lot of troubles. Get married, you're double the responsibility. Get married, you have to balance even more spinning plates of life. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm not saying it's of the devil. I'm not saying it's wrecking my spiritual life, but it takes more discipline to be in that kind of relationship with children as a consequence. And a person that is ready and prepared to say, okay, I lost my husband at this age. I'm going to remain celibate. I'm going to do that because I want to devote myself to the Lord. That sort of language really should be okay with us, and we should be kind of comfortable with that. It's a really challenging passage. It's hard. But I think that Paul is setting the possibility for us to go beyond where we're comfortable. Most of us think of celibacy as an unfortunate consequence. It can be a very beautiful thing. Here was the Apostle Paul. Jesus Christ, never married, never had children. There's a lot of romanticism involved in those kind of things, and I get it, but we need to think seriously about what God says and not listen to our present heart-beating society. Because surely, what God says is more important than that. It's worth thinking about. I know it's awkward. Sorry. It's just what it is. You can't change what God says. Go home and study it. If you got some correction for me or some encouragement for me to think about this chapter in a different way, I'll do my best to listen. I'm certainly not going to fight you about it. But this is what I hear Paul say. So we'll think on it and pray on it and encourage these young people. Relationships are really important. the most important is with God. So if you're here tonight and you need to do something about your present walk, we'll be ready to receive you. As together we stand and sing this song.